Hi guys, so we're back to the laptop. You can see the beard's growing nicely. My mum was only saying how dark my hair has gotten since I was younger. So when I was a kid, it used to be light brown. And you can see my Romanian complexion. By the way, that's what I used to joke about that with my Romanian mate. Gave myself a Romanian name, Bogdan Paparescu. Nobody says I look Irish anyway. It's either like, oh, you've got an Iberian complexion, or you're Romanian. Usually they think I'm Romanian, Bulgarian, got an Albanian as well. So over towards that region, anyway, Eastern Europe. Um, but yeah, enough of that shite dog. What I was talking about in this video is something that I feel like it's relevant, and I've made a few videos now. I made a couple of short videos just talking about dealing with workplace conflict because I feel like yeah, it's something that we were discussing today. I was doing Pathway to Work as a new course that I'm doing because I mean, I may as well do courses in the meantime. I don't have a full-time job, you know what I mean? And that's what I do to remind myself that I am fucking trying very hard, and it's not been easy. It really hasn't, it's been tough. And I was in at 10 o'clock, then had an appointment with um my counselor, and then I had to go and see her at 12 o'clock. But luckily, it wasn't too far, so I could walk up to her. It was within walking distance in Gorey here in Wexford. Went to her, and I just kind of, started spilling the beans. It's like, look, I don't feel much self worth at the minute. I don't feel a whole lot of anything really. I'm trying to keep going. Look, getting up today, I had a great night's sleep, brilliant, and I didn't want to get out of the bed. So I was like, look, I'll eat my breakfast on the way to the course because I just wanted every moment that I could of sleep. It was had to be up and out of the house at 9:30. So it was about 8:15, and I was like, I'm going back to bed. I'm going for a lie on. And I'm in a fortunate position that I can do that, but I fucking need it. Right now, I would not be able to function, I don't think, in a full time job. Um, I'm terrified when I go back, I won't be given the correct training because I've just collapsed. You know what I mean? That there's been so much shit going on, um, a lot of shit going on, and I'm also worried about meeting the wrong kind of people in work. That won't be sympathetic, and even if they are, can I do the job? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's a tough one. You know, um, I really don't know, but I'm building up skills, working on my CV, cover letters. We're doing interview skills as well. I think I'm getting the best possible preparation for going back to full time employment. So I've got the degree. Now it's about getting me into a job. I didn't think it'd be this difficult, honestly. I thought it'd be a lot easier. Also, I'm off doing my manual driving lessons. So yes, was flying along with the instructor on Monday, and he said I was doing really well. He was impressed, because I nearly crashed my dad's car before when practicing, and it's been something that's really bothered me. He was freaked the fuck out. He was like, "Right, get out of the car. You're not driving it again," basically. And I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to." Just getting bad hay fever in the eyes. That one's a bit the pollen. But yeah, I wanted to kind of bust a myth, bust a rhyme. But a lot of people talk about, and I was interested in actually Shawnee K. I hope you're watching Shawnee. I was going to do an interesting topic today, and one that you were asking about. You see, like how Shawnee was asking questions, and like it could be taken up the wrong way, but I understand completely what you were asking. So I made a video talking about autism and conflict avoidance, and if you can check that out if you want, anyone. I think it was an interesting one. And I think that people who try with autism are hampered a lot. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you stay in your lane and don't try and better yourself, And then it's in this lane. It's like, oh, isn't he great? He can tie his own shoelaces and he can talk and all this shit. But we're not going to expect anything of him, you know. I look at the likes of Adam Harris for as I am. Look, I support anyone who's willing to spread the word about autism and, get funding or whatever. But as far as I can see, there's still very little understanding of it. I do think now, I will say it is a great time to be alive and be different. If you are different, you're in a very accepting time. But in terms of actual supports, I don't see it. You know what I mean? I think the good nature of people is there in a lot of cases, which I have seen. When I say that I'm autistic, people are like, "Oh, well, fair play to you. You're doing great. And I have a nephew with autism, and he's non-verbal." And then they're like, "You're doing really well." And I'm like, "Thank you, I appreciate that." Um, but in terms of actual functionality in the workplace, I need to know when I'm going to have my training. Need to know how I'm going to function, and I need to be told if I'm expected to get if I'm told that I'm going to get 3 months of training and I'm not going to be doing any actual hands-on work until I feel comfortable enough. You know what I mean? Some people who were in jobs before me in the same position even said we were sitting around for 6 months just doing training. We were bored. We wanted to start sampling and going into work. I was like, grand. And like that was when I worked as a water sampler. They were like, yeah, we got bored because we were just training non-stop for 6 months. Then we went into sampling. I started doing it after 2 weeks. So I was like, okay, yeah, it was kind of exciting. Don't get me wrong, but I would have preferred being so bored that I was raring to go, if you know what I mean. And I feel like a lot of places they just don't prepare you correctly. They expect you to jump in the deep end, and then when you do, and you show that you're diligent and obliging, they'll just keep piling the work on. It's like, oh, you could take more. Yeah, you could take more. And I don't like quitting. I feel so much shame if I leave a job and I haven't given it my best shot. But I feel like with every job I've been at, maybe it looks like I wasn't because of my mental state, but I gave it my all, especially when you consider what was going on in the background, like family issues, my own head, injuries that I got playing rugby that meant that I couldn't train, meant that I couldn't go to the gym, really knocking my confidence, being severely depressed, being on a new antidepressant, coming off an antidepressant. There was a whole heap of reasons why I could have been fucked up. you know, there's one thing that I want to talk about, and that is autism and bullying, right? And violence. That's what I typed in. I literally typed it in. Now, the first bit is Wikipedia, so take that with a pinch of salt. But I'm going to show you a few articles, and we're going to have a look at this because I want to put this myth to bed right now. Right, so let's have a look at this here. Now, Wikipedia can sometimes have truth. It's not gospel, but we'll have a look at just what this says. Violence and autism. So let's have a look. I think a lot of this actually is true. So, at least from my own personal experience, what they're saying seems to be true. So we'll see it here. And it goes, various connections have been made between violence and autism within social narratives. According to public opinion, violent behavior is common for autistic individuals, but evidence does not support autism spectrum disorder, ASD, as a predisposition to delinquency or crime. In fact, people on the autism spectrum are more likely to be victims of bullying, abuse, and other violence, more likely to be the victim. And the same thing I might add for schizophrenia, something that is often really stigmatized. They're always made out to be serial killers, and that's not true. They might have a paranoid delusion or hallucinations, and the voices who literally say to them, kill this person, do it. And can you imagine going through that? And then eventually you do one severe incident. But I think labeling everyone on the autism spectrum as violent does not help anyone. And I don't think it's true either. But we get into that anyway. I give my own personal experience, which I always like to come down to, but we will do that, but all in due time. Violence against autistic people. Autistic individuals are often victims of violence, including bullying, abuse, sexual assault, and criminal acts. Violence can be physical or verbal, as illustrated by frequent use of the word autistic as an insult. And that's an interesting point. So I keep thinking of my so-called friends growing up, but I remember one of them, I didn't even know what autism was at this stage. and they used it as an insult. Oh, are you autistic? And start laughing. And I didn't know what it was, but they knew I was because I think someone had told them. I think their parents couldn't keep their mouth shut, and obviously they've been talking to my mum and dad, who just told them in passing. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. You could be discussing kids and how they're getting on. They obviously told their kids something they shouldn't have done, and they used that, and they were supposed to be my friends. And that's the thing, you can often be misled and told, oh, that we're just slagging, we're just teasing, get over yourself. And you're kind of like, it's my fault, I'm the problem, especially if you put yourself outside your comfort zone. So it's easy for you to just sit in your comfort zone where you're comfortable and you never push yourself, and you're top dog in your own environment because it's your environment. But you put yourself out there into somebody else's environment where they're the king, basically. In a social environment where you don't know everybody else, you don't know the rules, they all have their little cliques, they all pick up on the social cues. You're opening yourself up for severe abuse, and it's whether you sink or swim, unfortunately, because that's just how it is. Wean out the weak, as they say. I say that a lot. Most people don't even pick me up on it. I pick myself up on it, as they say. But who's they? I wonder. But yeah, it is. It's used as an insult. Ah, are you autistic or something? Or that's so autistic. The same with dyslexia. Like, if someone, obviously, a key example is if you mispronounce a word or have a spelling error, you go, ah, you big dyslexic, or as we used to say to one of our mates, you big dyslexical. So I mean, look, it happens. Slagging happens, but dyslexical because jumbled up the words. He used to laugh about it as well. To go, here, lads, I'm so dyslexic. Never diagnosed though, but we had our suspicions. And just so you know, Leonardo da Vinci and W.B. Yeats were both dyslexic, so obviously not stupid. But yeah, autistic used as an insult. Autistic people, like many people with disabilities, are often victims of hate crimes, and many live in fear. I mean, I've lived in fear, for sure. I go out, like even today, going out in Gory Main Street, I'm anxious as fuck. And they're thinking, I'm scanning the place constantly for threats, even though I don't feel particularly threatened. Like, I don't think anyone's going to attack me, but I can't explain it. I tense up, my back gets all tight, my shoulders come forward. That always happens to me, just in different amounts. So it's very easy to withdraw. And it's because of shit like all this going on. I have to say, most of my stuff was verbal. You know, as he say in other videos, not that I won every single fight that I was ever in, but I was quite handy if people wanted to get physical because I just started lashing out. Um, One of the lads that I hung around with in school said it before. He said it was a sight to behold because me and another fella got into a tussle, and my mate said he kind of pushed you and you tripped over someone. Someone kind of stood behind me, kind of trying to trip me up. He said the second you hit the ground, you bounced up and then ran straight into him and threw him into a locker. It was mental to look at because you just click, you flip a switch almost, you know what I mean? It makes me feel very deflated after I lose my temper. I get very angry. A lot of people have said, oh, you could have killed him and you could have done, all the stuff you could have done. And you're kind of like, yeah, but I don't enjoy getting tense and getting into a row with people. So if they want to start trying to take my stuff and antagonize me, I'm more than happy to go toe to toe with them. But I don't feel good after it. And usually it'll be people in their groups. So always be wary of that, as I say. If someone's really confident and cocky, they're probably in the majority. And it's very easy to be confident when you've got all your mates with you. Let's see how you are when they're not with you. But there's a lot of cowards out there, unfortunately, who gang up on vulnerable people and think it's funny. As he said in another video as well, a few people in my school used to brag about beating up homeless people in the street, just for no reason. I mean, real fucking hard man, aren't you? But if they're willing to do that, as it says here, vulnerable people, you know, people with disabilities. You're a big fucking man, aren't you? Picking on someone who's like, look at that. That was me as a kid. And it actually fucking breaks my heart saying that. You just want to cover up. You want to hide. You want to shut down because the world around you is so uncomfortable. Like it is. It's fucking torture. And you want to live a normal life like everybody else does. I know what is normal, right? But you know what I mean. You want to meet all those milestones that everybody else has. You know, like for me, most people my age probably have been driving their whole lives. For me, it's not something that comes very naturally to me. And because I have a lot of traumas and anxieties, I worked, I went to the gym, I trained my arse off rather than focusing on stuff I needed to improve myself. I overtrained, I drank, I did whatever just to keep me going. Um, but there's a lot of things I need to do that I'm getting to now that I'm not beating myself up as much as I used to, but I'm still beating myself up a little, trust me. I'm coming to terms with a lot of things from my past. Just getting a dry mouth and that tickle in the back of the throat. So here we go. 2003 study found that children diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which is what I was diagnosed with, autism spectrum disorder as it is now, but Asperger's syndrome, which would be high functioning autism, they're more likely to be victims of violence than tormentors. Yeah, more often than not, they're going to be victims, let's face it. Um, which is sad, really. Violence against non-speaking autistic people is also facilitated by the fact that they are unable to talk about it and report it. Imagine doing something like that, like for fuck's sake. In general, the more a person is considered to be in a weak situation or as a severe case, the more vulnerable they are to violence and exclusion. Dependence is an aggravating factor, especially if daily assistance is required for everyday living and activities such as meals and washing. The seriousness of the disability can thus be invoked to justify all types of violence, including murder. Fuck me. In schools, bullying is the most common form of violence among children and adolescents, according to Park et al. 2020. Autistic students are victims more often than other students. The prevalence of being victimized is higher than being a perpetrator of bullying. Well, there we have it. And the family environment. Familial abuse against autistic children does not appear to be more frequent than familial abuse against non autistic children. So, like, child abuse is not more common among autistic children than it is among neurotypical children, let's say. It's kind of the same. It's not a factor, like a defining factor. However, cases of infanticide, sorry, fantasia, it means basically murder of an infant. Infanticide, usually committed by the mother of an autistic child, have been documented. Dozens of murders have been reported in Western press over the past decade, particularly in Canadian press. Wonder why? Each murder case is treated individually, but the general motive given for each is autism or living with autism. Okay. Testimony on this subject emphasizes the supposed severity of autism and the despair it is thought to generate. A form of extreme violence, the murder of autistic people by their relatives, is justified by the bad public perception of autism, assimilated to lifelong pathology that should be fought. Okay. Assimilated to a lifelong pathology that should be fought. Some of this violence results from the medical model of autism, which promotes a vision of autism as a disease to be eradicated or an abnormality to be normalized. Getting a bit Hitler-esque there, isn't it? Sounds exactly like what the Nazis wanted to do. The extreme violence is illustrated by the accounts of murderers who want to kill autism in the hope of making their loved ones normal. Fair enough. Social class seems to be a predisposing factor to murder, as the infanticidal mothers do not have the financial resources to receive effective support for their disabled child. And then we look at this little picture over here. The changeling myth was once used to justify the abandonment and murder of autistic babies and children by their biological families. Okay, so now we get into. All right, let's have a look at it here. So it's violence expressed by autistic people. So this is violence committed by us autistic folk. According to Anne Sophie Ferry, autism is not characterized by violence or outbursts of anger, though the latter sometimes results from communication difficulties or accumulated distress. Institutionalized non-speaking autistic adolescents may express violent behaviors such as spitting or biting without understanding their actions. Okay. Some behavioral characteristics of autistic people are wrongly interpreted as violence by those around them, including dislike of physical contact, lack of eye contact, and lack of response to parents' voices. Non speaking autistic people may have inappropriate behavior in terms of force and impact on the other person, leading to them being characterized as violent behaviors. Further, autistic people's sensor hypersensitivities. Sorry, let me say that again. Further, autistic people's sensory hypersensitivities can trigger reactions that are perceived as violent. Autistic individuals may attempt to cope with sensory overload sorry, by impulsively releasing it through actions such as avoidance or clawing gestures. So like clawing at a, yeah, often without considering the potential for violence. This violence is not intended to harm others, but rather as an effort to regulate their sensory experiences. So that actually sounds like something I used to do as a kid. So my brother, like, it's funny because he has an ability to bend his finger like this. So this little section here, the top of it, he can literally bend that over. It's called we call him swan neck because it's like a swan's neck or Nessie. I got him to stick his finger out of the water before, but there was something about him. He, if his sleeves were kind of not fully covering his wrists, but they were kind of halfway down, he used to drive me mental, and I used to kind of claw at him a little bit, which, well, not a little bit, quite a bit, um, which I'm not proud of, but it hurt him, like it's kind of scraping at him. I used to scrape at other kids as well. If they annoyed me or had something, I don't even know what it was, something weird with their hands, but that sounds kind of familiar. I don't know what it was. It's kind of interesting because if my sleeves, my brother has a thing now where if my sleeve is ever like this, he has to roll it down. So who knows? Maybe it rubbed off on him, sadly. But yeah, I definitely understand that. And that's the thing. I don't actually think I was intending to hurt him, but it was annoying me so much. It was like, pull that down. That's fucking annoying me. You know what I mean? Or if a t-shirt was really annoying me, like it was not to be too blunt, but shirts in school used to rub off my nipples, and I used to go and bite them like that, and then because it was so annoying, the sensation, and it'd rub, and I was like, fuck's sake, and then remember when you used to get pocketed in school? Nobody managed to do it to me. I was clever. I was always one step ahead. One fella even went up behind me and tried to get me, but I had my hand in my pocket. I was good at avoiding that stuff. Somehow. So, criminal and delinquent behaviour. No evidence exists suggesting an association between ASD and delinquency, and the delinquency rate is lower among autistic individuals than among holistic individuals. So, holistic is kind of, I would say, the general population. Let's have a look. I don't know what holistic means, to be honest with you. Um, hmm, interesting. I have no idea what it means. I think it means the general population. Think so. But anyway, we get on with the video. Individual cases of autistic criminals do not provide generalization of a predisposition to violence to the entire autistic community. Despite never showing any sign of the syndrome, a cannibalistic and necrophiliac serial murderer, I saw the name down below and was hoping he wouldn't come up with Jeffrey Dahmer, was retrospectively diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome 8 years after his death, but the accuracy of that speculative diagnosis has been questioned. And he was diagnosed after his death with multiple things that were never proven. And there wasn't enough time or effort put into it. He quite a monotone voice, so if anyone remembers him, he was asked about the crimes he committed, and it was just kind of there was a lot of there was a lot of isolated drinking, and then it just got worse and worse after that. I don't know why I did what I did, and it was very monotone. Apparently, he walked quite straight and awkward, with a stiff back and slumped shoulders. So his back was up like this, and the shoulders were kind of slumped. And that's kind of what they used to say that he was autistic, but he was also said potentially now to have had borderline personality disorder. And I made a video on that. But I mean, that's something that could possibly have stemmed from the fact that he was genuinely abandoned, unfortunately for him, when he was younger. And I just feel like that doesn't help anyone because you don't know. And then that gets labeled as, oh, autistic people are evil, they're murderers. And then let's look at social perception because I've heard people say that we have fucking special powers. So maybe. I think it's because you can recall everything. I joke about that with my brother because I'll say something to him. I was like, "Oh, doesn't your friend live here? Didn't your friend go to France 2 years ago?" Let's say as an example, and he'd be like, "I don't know, did he?" And I was like, "You told me he did," and he'd be like, "Oh yeah." That's what he says. He's like, "If you told me I said that, then I said it." At least he trusts my memory. He trusts my memory more than his own. In fairness to him, he's a good guy. So here we go. So social perception, and we're getting to this now. Autism is associated with inappropriate behaviors such as violence, delinquency, crime, including mass killing in the English, French, and German media. Would have thought them Germans would be more up to date with it. They're usually quite well versed in everything. I find it easier to get on with Germans because they're quite letter of the law. Everything is as it's supposed to be. Matter of fact, they might be quite, you know, introverted people, but they're all right. They mean what they say and they say what they mean. Very efficient, though. I love that about the Germans. Extremely efficient. I like the French too, and the English aren't bad either. I was actually working with an English girl today. I say girl, she's a good bit older than me, but she's English from London. Real Cockney. All right, mate. All right, but obviously of Irish descent. We were having a good laugh about that because my dad worked in London and so did my mum. But anyway, sorry, one moment. Move on. Robert Chapman argued in 2017 that a bias exists in the way of information about violence and autism is in the way information about violence in autism is processed. Violence experienced against allistic people. Yeah, so allistic people, I would say, are neurotypical people. Your average Joe, maybe not neurotypical, but autistic versus non-autistic, let's say. So violence expressed against autistic people from autistic people may receive more attention, whereas violence experienced by autistic people is invisible or considered normal, leading to a collective cultural failure to recognize violence against autistic people as a significant and pressing socio-cultural issue. Yeah, and I mean, I think that's pretty well said by Robert Chapman. I think it's a good argument. you know, um, because I don't feel like I don't feel like all my needs should be given into, and I could understand completely why someone like my brother, let's say, might feel like, oh, he's getting all the attention because one, he's always in fucking trouble, but we have to make special allowances because he has this hypersensory system and all this stuff. And I understand how a sibling could get pissed off and feel left out in that case. Like, I don't think for a second like, that it's easy, first of all, living with someone who has it. I know it's fucking not. Um, yes, it's not easy living with it, but it's also not easy for the family. So when I make any video, like, I understand full well what my mom and my brother and my dad to a degree have gone through, but my mom and my brother have dealt with it more than anyone. Have they made some mistakes along the way? Yes, but sorry, 1 second, I'm gonna sneeze. I don't know if I am or I'm gonna sneeze, but we will see. But yeah, like when I make any video and I'm saying about ways I feel let down, or ways in which my mom and my brother are pissing me off, it's like it's just how I'm feeling, and some of it's true, some of it's not. But I also know that they have been there for me for a lot as well. So it's not a dig against them. It's saying they should have done this and they did this instead. But we all fuck up, all right, that's fair. I've fucked up, plenty of times. That's why I say stuff that I'm not happy that I've done. Because there's a lot of that too, believe me. Where we all fuck up, we all make mistakes, but stuff that's bothering me that I'm trying to get over and I'm trying to rationalize it. But I understand that it was hard on them too, 100%. So I get it, you know. At the same time, if someone with autism is trying to fit in to your group, like with rugby and football, and Gaelic football was the worst, I have to say, the most unwelcoming sport that I've ever tried. I played it in school as well. I preferred it in school; it was more welcoming there. But when I went to play for a club, as I say, maybe it might have just been the club, and if I'd gone to another one, it would have been better. But I felt very unwelcome, not only because I was autistic, but because I wasn't mates with the coach's son and all this shit, all this bollocks that comes with it. I fucking hate that stuff. I was made to feel very unwelcome. Got into a fight with my own teammate in the first session, you know, because like if you ever see GAA, like if you ever watch it, you'll see how when someone's marking you, they're shoving you in the back, they're pushing you. Um, there's a fella Dan O'Donoghue and Dean Rock. If you watch that video, it's literally bumping into each other and just Dean Rock's, in fairness, trying to practice a lot of patience, but Dan O'Donoghue just keeps grabbing him, pulling at him. And your man was doing that to me, like swinging his elbow at me like that, and so I turned around and I punched him. I got on top of him and I started hitting him, and the coach dragged me off. My dad dragged me off. Everyone was giving out and screaming at me. Um, all his mates jumped in to help him out, and I was labelled as a troublemaker. And oh, I felt terrible. I went over into the corner and I started crying, bawling my eyes out because it just felt like I'm being rejected from something else. And that fellow was there smirking. And I started screaming at him, "What are you fucking laughing at?" My dad just told me to get over myself and had no empathy whatsoever. And that fucking hurts. That really hurts. You know what I mean? Like, it's not easy. Like, and I was trying so fucking hard to fit in. That's why I went to things like boxing, like rugby. With boxing, I wish I'd have stuck it out, but I was trying to be more macho than I am. I'm naturally a sensitive person. I think a lot of neurodivergent people are more sensitive, which doesn't get portrayed an awful lot. And we're going to read further on, but I tried super macho things to try and appear like people thought I should. Makes me realize how much I shut down who I am. And I think, like, where did I go when I was a kid? I used to love things like David Attenborough. And I was only talking to my mum yesterday about it, how I could name everything. Killer whales were my jam. But I could talk to teachers about different species, and I had a love for zoology, for ecology, loved animals, wanted to get into science. That all kind of faded, you know what I mean? Like I ended up going back to it and doing DNA and forensics. So I do think maybe it's a good thing that I stuck with it because maybe it's something I'd like to get into. But I convinced myself that, I would have to do a masculine job, like go into construction sites that for me are soul crushing. You can say what you want, a lot of them are soul crushing. A lot of the people on them are miserable. And they weren't always like that, but they meet other people and it's just like I just don't like them. I find them toxic places. There's always someone giving you shit. There's always someone roaring at you. My brother even we were laughing about that. We were joking, saying how we were both brought in, told to sit down and wait for someone to come and get us. Told nothing, given no information. And then when we waited, like we were told to do, someone had came in and give out to us for sitting around doing nothing. It was like, you told me to do that. You couldn't fucking win. And look, if you've got your eye on a trade and you're in with a good company, fine. Look, go for it. But in my experience, I was left to just pick up pissy overalls, sweep yards, go around the whole thing in the pissings of rain, picking up cans of Monster and cigarette butts. Yeah, fun times. It was like, fuck this. And maybe I would have stuck it out if it wasn't that I got offered a place in college. So my life could have been different. But I tried so hard to fit into everyone else's normal, so hard. And it was used against me. And I felt like I had to fit into everyone else's mold. You know what I mean? So I find stuff like this very unhelpful. But let's look at this. I think Robert Chapman, fair play, well said. I check him out in the future. When we look at this, media portrayals of autism and violence negatively influence public opinion on autism and foster negative impressions of autistic people by linking ASD with criminal behavior. For example, an analysis of 100 French and Italian works of children's and young people's literature published between 1995 and 2005, featuring a main character with a disability, found that autistic people are presented as violent. The film The Specials has a line that autism educators take a beating all day. What the fuck is that now? So it's a French film basically saying that autistic caregivers get battered all day. It's very helpful, yeah, lovely. The film The Specials has a line that autism educators take a beating all day. The American film The Accountant, which features an obsessive, unempathetic, autistic accountant operating as a contract killer, Ben Affleck, that is, has been called offensive to autistic people, in part because of the violence it exhibits. Yeah, and they always make us out to be some kind of criminal mastermind. It's like maybe sometimes, yeah, but not always. Beyond fictional characterizations, news sources may perpetuate the connection between autism and violence. For instance, an American mass murderer was immediately labeled as autistic in the French media. Geez, the French have a real problem with autistic people, don't they? The French are out to get us. Here I was siding with the French over the English, and now I might have to join forces because the French are out to get me. Don't go up to France if you're autistic, people. Jesus. The French really have a thing against us. Uh, they'll probably surrender anyway once we take up arms. For instance, an American mass murderer was immediately labeled as autistic in the French media on December 14th, 2012. Individual cases of autistic people versed in cybercrime and terrorism have also been documented in the press. Well, I'm not thinking of getting involved in terrorism anytime soon, so I'm out. Activists for the rights of autistic people oppose the media's tendency to link autism and violence, arguing that social discrimination is already a source of suffering for this population. Activists began to document acts of violence committed against autistic people in the 2000s, calling for a political response. Right, so let's get out of this now. There's Dr. Todd Grande. That post, by the way, this didn't really help. I really didn't like the comments on it, and I'm just going to show them to you now. I really didn't like how they portrayed this. I'm going into it with you now. Well, let's have a look. Yeah, like my heart does go out to people like this. So if you just look at it here, my son is on the same spectrum. However, I am a single parent doing it on my own. As soon as he was 18, I fought and fought to get him on SSI, assisted living, I think that is. Have a look. Yeah, it was by Victoria Derbyshire anyway, from the BBC and Noel Phillips. So yeah, this is the right one. I'm just making sure I'm on the right one. Jesus, and here we are. A mother killing her autistic son, as we were just talking about. This lad's very good, by the way, Mark Hutton, MA. I like his stuff. He's very empathetic to the struggle of autistic people, very much so. Willie Prader, or Prader Willie syndrome, that's been linked to violent outbursts as well. It's like a never-ending appetite, FYI. Um, well, yeah. Anyway, we I don't know enough about that to say whether or not it's like autism, but there's certain overlaps definitely. But yeah, this mother is fighting to get her child on SSI, but I think it's assisted living. After many times of being denied, he was finally approved. Immediately, I put him in assisted living. Okay, there we are. If anyone knows what that stands for, please let me know. I cannot control a grown man bigger than myself. Understandable. The threat of harm is too much to live with, even if it's your own child that you love so much, but you cannot help. You feel like a failure on a daily basis, and there is nothing you can do about it. So, like, my heart goes out to this person. It really does, and I understand where she's coming from. Social security income. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kira 198923. If you made it through 18 years, you did enough. Yeah, and look, um, I understand why you'd be looking for help. Supplemental security income. I don't know. Okay, it's it provides monthly payments for disabled adults and children who are low or no income. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Nin Kindy. I hope you're right. Okay. Worry about Japan's population crisis at another time. Um, I was watching that movie like there was no tomorrow, Contagion, when COVID was around. I know a lot of people were as well, but I'm fascinated by outbreaks and epidemics. It really is something that very much interests me, and I'd like to be prepared. I'm not going to build a bunker or anything, but I'd like to get into research. Don't know if I'd end up working on pathogens now that are dangerous like Ebola or anything like that. Though there are some cool videos on that if you want to check them out. Biosafety level 4 labs. It's something that definitely I salute all the people who work in them because they're very brave. So it's a little fascination of mine. It's just like how could you work in that all day? It's very restrictive. Like clean room gowning was enough for me. Anyway, getting sidetracked. So just looking at another comment here, I hate how only autism portrayed in the media is the aesthetic kind, where they turn out to be geniuses. No one knows about severe autism, and it kills me. Edit. I also want to acknowledge that the people with high functioning autism also face lots of stereotypes about their autism. I feel like the people like my brother, who was like the kids shown here, are almost not known about at all. Yeah. Aoife Temple, the genius artists are highly rare and not many exist. Okay, so here we go. No, that's highlighted too. It's called the pity documentaries that are made about them. Both major ends are highlighted, genius and barely capable, but were never portrayed as people. I like that comment. And basically, what Mystique Queen or Mystic Queen 3551, what I think you're saying there, and I agree 100%, is its extreme ends are represented. The violent kid was just making noises, like, I'm not going, it's going to sound kind of funny, I know, but there's a lot of kids that make noise like, and you'll see them like in the corner rocking back and forth, having a meltdown. That's all we get to see, you know what I mean? And that shit pisses me off. It really fucking does. You know, um, the amount of autistic people I think of who were never pushed, right? And I think you've got to be pushed. Expect better for yourself. You know what I mean? Like, and I know there are people of different capabilities. I 100% get that. Like, but I was given no fucking hope. Like, I went into doctor's offices at 7, was diagnosed with autism. My principal in my primary school copped it. She said it. I was obviously shown obvious enough signs that even in massive crowds of kids, she was able to cop it. And even though she was on the ball, obviously the signs were there. I couldn't go undetected. I was obviously quite withdrawn, and I did. I withdrew quite a bit after my dad left, and I really withdrew. I just didn't develop, the same rate that everybody else was. And I was never intending to do bad to people, but I just felt there was so much in the world I couldn't control. And I started kind of getting friends, then I started not having them. They saw that I was kind of different, and they went from being friends to treating me differently, and you know, singling me out and picking on me. So I'd chase them, I'd lash out at them, I'd hit them, and I'd be the worst in the world. There'd always be them bleeding and crying and playing the victim, and I was the big bully. But they made me fucking crazy. I always had to be called in, be it school, after school, on the road, even. I became afraid of being violent in case I was taken away, because that was used as a threat, just to stop me being so aggressive, and carried on into the house as well. You know what I mean? Which gives me the most guilt because I brought it home with me. But it's not as if everything was fucking hunky dory. You do have flashbacks of stuff like breaking stuff in the house and your mom being upset. And I understand as a parent how difficult that. Well, I don't, but I can only imagine how difficult it would be. I'm not excusing all my actions, but what I'm saying is, I was told I wouldn't stick to rugby. As soon as I started it, they were like, "No, won't stick with that. Won't like that. No chance. No fucking hope. Take Ritalin. Put this fucker on Ritalin so that he's not bothering everybody else." And that's what I get when I hear this. He's 18 now, so off. He can get his assisted living and off he fucks. No hope given. Assisted living, off you go. And I was always aware that other people were progressing and I wasn't. Like, so you like to think that autistic people don't know what's going on. I was only talking to a woman today who says her son is quite bad and needs to go into one of these assisted living programs because she's getting old now and can't look after him. and she has chronic pain. So I mean, I understand, but she said she knows he can understand what she's saying. He just can't respond. It's like yes or no or yeah, or puffing or sighing or whatever. Just grunts here and there, yes or no, very direct. And she knows he knows what's going on because he can display that he knows. It's like wanting to belong, but you don't fucking know how. That's the best way of describing it. And yeah, I just makes me sad and it makes me feel like now that I'm at an age where I'm, not a kid anymore and I'm expected to go into the big bad world. How the fuck do I do that? Which everyone gets, yeah, everybody gets that, but a lot of people have spoken about how autistic services just seem to stop when you become an adult and you still need them. Autism isn't just for the weekend, it's for life, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately, but again, I say there's benefits, but look, there's definitely a lot of challenges. I don't think it's necessarily our fault, but unfortunately, the world is yet to understand that, and a lot of people pretend to and go, "Oh, isn't he great? Isn't he wonderful?" And they don't genuinely care, and they don't. They just care about looking like they care. It's virtue signaling at its finest. Autism is the trendy thing to get on now, so we need to be proven that we care about autism. Our organization supports autism. We just think you guys are great, off working in the post room. And God forbid, though, you should get any pride and actually want to achieve something with your life. Because unfortunately, most autistic people are not like your Rain Man savants who are geniuses. I mean, now he's very much impaired in everyday living, but he's meant to be a genius or, like Ben Affleck in The Accountant, some sociopathic, psychopathic killer. Doesn't have any empathy for anyone. I can tell you I'm full of empathy. I've looked after my mom countless times. She's looked after me. Most of the times I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't care. So I wanted to make sure she was happy. All I did was look out for other people because I didn't care about myself. I didn't know what I wanted from life, from anything. Didn't know who I was. I still don't. So, oh, but yeah, you look at these comments because I feel like something like this is important. People are telling their stories, and you can read as many articles as you want. But let's have a look at people telling actual stories. So we have Briar Rose 5208. I live in the US. A friend of mine has a severely autistic son. Her husband died when their son was still a child, so she was a single mom. Kind of similar to how, well, my mom did have to do most of the raising on her own anyway, even though my dad's very much alive. Her son grew up. He had always had violent outbursts, but now he was dangerous. He destroyed his bedroom and their bathroom. He attacked and injured his mother several times. He was hospitalized and sedated several times. Public school couldn't manage his behavior either. His mom put him in a day program for kids with special needs. He came home nights and weekends. She has had to fight every step of the way to get services that were desperately needed. She always worked full time, as did my mum. They have never been on welfare. For years, she lived in fear that her son would kill her. She finally had to put him in residential programs, which she never wanted to do. She visits him several times a week. What the parents of children with severe autism have to go through is worse than we can even imagine. And I'd say that's fair enough. Um, and like you were saying over there, but um, Briar Rose, if a mother is working full time, what is she to do? And like I understand, I'm not coming at this from a, autistic people are great. You need to stop picking on us. You're the problem. And no, absolutely not. I actually think I'm perfectly placed to have empathy for both sides because I know I'm not fucking perfect. There were a lot of situations that I was not perfect, but a lot of people did not treat me perfectly either. Let me tell you. And if you were to play the victim autistic person in the background and go, "Oh, I was abused as an autistic person," everyone would go, "Oh my God, that's disgraceful." But I had violent outbursts because people antagonized me a lot, and yeah, it gives me a lot of feelings of guilt. And my mom thought, and she said it to me before, so I know. She said she was terrified of me ending up in prison when I got older. And she said that to me a few times. I only ended up getting arrested and spending one night in jail. So she was proven wrong, thankfully. But she was worried that my violent outbursts were going to continue, and I get into fights, I get into rows as I got older. Well, threats were used by both my mom and my dad of me ending up in special school, being taken away to live in a special facility for people with autism. I mean, it worked because I felt like I had to change something, but it was fear tactics. Because if I got into a fight with a kid in school, on the road, in after school crash or whatever, it was kind of like, oh, he's in another fucking fight. But I was terrible with my words, so I just lashed out at people, you know? And then I kind of shut down and thought, be good, be nice to everybody because you're the problem. They're not. You are the problem. Nobody is going to have your side or have your back. You're the fucking issue. So change everything about yourself because you are the problem, not everybody else. Society ain't changing for you, so you need to fucking fit into our mold. Green banana 1001. My son cannot talk, cannot toilet train, scream constantly, is always hyper, never sits down, never sleeps. It's so exhausting, and unless people have dealt with something similar, they have no idea how it feels. Yeah, respite services. And I will say, for my mom, it was hard for her getting services for me. And I want to just say, what has helped me to be better as a human being is knowing all the shit my mom went through and being like, look, you've got to change, Sonny, because what you're putting her through is not fair. You know what I mean? And it's not. And here's where I'm going to call out autistic people and go, you have to fucking change as well. You can't put putting your parents through this, and you can say you don't know any better. I think there's a lot of people who just. I can imagine if someone's big and they're throwing stuff and they're having temper tantrums. Fair enough, the parent might just give in because they're afraid. You know, what do you do? Do you beat your kid? Do you hit your kid? Or I mean, I obviously wouldn't be recommending that, but certainly you might have to in certain situations if you're scared for your own life. You know, um, yeah, like I never had issues with toilet training, at least, and but I empathized, like when my mum was going through a tough time when my dad left, and this is before I was even diagnosed. I remember just wanting to make her happy. That's all I ever fucking wanted to do. And my dad, that's why I played sport to try and make him feel happy. Absolutely don't. You don't have the right if you're autistic to put your parents through hell. I don't care. I don't stand for that. I don't think it's ever okay. And if an autistic person is never made to grow and to actually try stuff and challenge themselves, they're never going to change. The guy was told it was the worst case. I felt like I had to change because of what I was putting my parents through, but also because I wasn't allowed to be myself. When I asked my mom, was I always violent? Was I always an issue? She said, no, you didn't start really until probably Probably I'd say she was saying 8, 9. And then I kind of stopped the age of 11 or 12. Still a bit, but then after 12 and 13, I still had incidents in school and start kind of hanging around with the wrong crowd, start drinking, so there was more teenage behavior, if you want to put it that way, but going out with the wrong crowd, smoking, drinking, risking arrest now, you know what I mean? Going to nightclubs, getting into rows, being thrown out. Um, you're seriously risking getting locked up now, you know what I mean? And yeah, but I always had empathy, and it's like you don't have to, you don't have the right to put your parents through this. And that's what stopped me from getting into trouble is thinking, like if I got hooked on drugs or something, my parents would have to deal with some drug dealer coming into the house and I won't put them through that. So you get fucking empathy. Um, yeah. Then you've got late diagnosis. Paddy McGuinness and Christine McGuinness talk about their late diagnosis. Well, she had a diagnosis. Paddy McGuinness, I don't think has, but I don't know. And Christine McGuinness, in fairness, she faced a lot of abuse as a child. God love her. Which isn't nice to hear about. She suffered from abuse at home, domestic violence, and she got to witness it as well. Well, here we go now. Let's have a look at this. Is this an Australian article? Yeah, Australian parenting website. Because parents do need a lot of assistance and help. I understand that. Staying calm can help you respond to aggressive or injurious behavior from autistic children and teenagers. So like banging out, lashing out. I used to do this all the time when I was younger. If you can work out why aggressive or self-injurious behavior happens, you can plan how to avoid it in the future. If children or teenagers are ever in immediate or life-threatening danger, call emergency services on 000, triple O. Oh, that's why in the Big Les show you're gonna need to call triple I, mate. You can't call the fucking cops for heckling. You can, nah, mate, because you're gonna need an ambulance by the time I'm done with you. That was gas. That's why you said triple O. That all makes sense now. Aggressive behavior and self-injury in autistic children and teenagers. What is it? Autistic children and teenagers sometimes express their emotions through aggressive behavior. Sometimes the aggressive behavior is directed towards objects or other people. For example, they might hit or kick people or throw objects. Sometimes the aggressive behavior is directed towards themselves, banging, hurt, yeah, like lashing out at stuff, you know what I mean? Punching the wall. I've punched walls until my knuckles were bleeding at times before. Sometimes the aggressive behavior is directed towards themselves. When children and teenagers hurt themselves, it's called self-injurious behavior. An example is head banging, headbutting the wall as well. Something I've done. You big headbanger, yeah. And so this is some advice for parents, which I do think is important. So I'm gonna go through it now, just in case, because it's not just all about the autistic person. It's about minding yourself as a whole. But having more of an idea how you can deal with it, I think, will help everyone. So we'll go through it. An example, yeah. When autistic children and teenagers feel completely overwhelmed, they can have meltdowns. Meltdowns are a sign of distress. Children and teenagers lose control of their behavior and find it very hard to calm themselves. And that's why I get so anxious nowadays because I used to lash out and start screaming and kicking, and you look like you're being a little shit. And I understand why you might think that, And I have so much guilt thinking about how many things I fucking ruined for my family because I just couldn't stop being a little shit. But I can't explain it any other way than I was just too overwhelmed to deal with the world. I can't people today. There's a lad called Jacob who was on Soft White Underbelly, a channel that I really like, and I reached out to him on his channel, and he makes pottery, and he's from Nebraska. A nice guy, and I like the way he says it. Um, Sneeze that's been waiting to come for a while. It was threatening to come for a while, and then it never did. Responding to aggressive behavior from autistic children and teenagers. You can't prevent every aggressive outburst from your autistic child, so it's important that you have strategies to deal with aggressive behavior when it happens. Stay calm. Most aggressive outbursts happen because your child has strong feelings and can't communicate them. Yeah, it's, you don't know what's wrong, but something's wrong. So you headbutt the wall. I laugh, but when it happens, it's serious. By managing your own feelings and staying calm, you're modeling good coping behavior. And when you're calm, it's so much easier for you to respond appropriately to your child's needs. Limit what you say. During an aggressive outburst, your child will be feeling very stressed. Yes, it's not enjoyable. Meltdowns are very much an unpleasant experience for us as well, let me tell you. Not that that helps because I understand it's obviously terrifying seeing it, and especially when that affects other people, but just rest assured it's not enjoyable for anyone at the time, which is why I wanted to get rid of them. If they were pleasurable, it's a good defense mechanism. So, but no, not pleasurable at all. It's hard for your child to process what someone else is saying when they're feeling stressed. It can help to use short phrases or even just a couple of words. For example, say, sit down rather than Lachlan, come over here and sit down. Just sit down. Like be firm. And you can be firm and direct. It's still a kid misbehaving. So, yeah, you've got to set ground rules. Move your child to a safer place. Where possible, try to make sure your child isn't close to anything that could hurt them or other people. And that's also like if you say the same thing for epileptic people, it's because they're having fits, they're spazzing out. Like that's actually what's happening. That's where the word comes from. But you're always told remove any objects that they could hurt themselves with, trash around, and just make sure they have a safe place for the head to rest. And I think it might be good advice to practice the same thing here. Where possible, try to make sure your child isn't close to anything that could hurt them or other people. For example, shelves that could fall over or glass objects. You might also need to get other people to move somewhere safe. Consider visual cues. Visual cues can help someone in this situation. For example, you might have a picture of a quiet place in your home that your child can go to. Seek help if you need to use physical restraint. If you find that you have to use physical restraint when your child has an aggressive outburst, speak with your child's pediatrician or other professionals about other options. Physical restraint can be dangerous to both you and your child. It can also increase your child's anxiety and make the situation worse. Okay, right. Okay, there's a bit of advice that I still think might be good to give. Responding to self injurious behavior in autistic children and teenagers. These strategies can help you handle self injurious behavior when it happens. Stay calm. When your autistic child is distressed, stay calm and use a calm tone of voice. Easier said than done, though, I know. This can reassure your child that they're safe and you're there to support them. Pause demands or expectations. Pause any activities or tasks that might be making your child feel stressed. Avoid giving more instructions or requests. Also, avoid talking about feelings. You can come back to the activity or task when your child is feeling calm again. Change the environment. If your child is hurting themselves because their environment is overwhelming, I just want to go back to the other point for a second. It's just kind of suppose any activities or tasks. I gave an example before, and I think this is one that really I want to give a bad example of how not to handle a situation, how you should. So I went to Gaelic football training, and I was clearly distressed. Something happened, a falling out with a teammate. I was overwhelmed. Rather than comfort me, what my dad did was made me wait by the car. And I was could have been being a bit of a little shit, yeah, but I was clearly distressed and I wanted to just go home. I wanted to leave. I was overwhelmed. He left me at the car, right? Then went back and started helping out with the coaching without me. Now, I understand, like, you do have to say sometimes your bad behavior doesn't get rewarded, you're going to be punished. But sometimes when I was going training, just being like that, I just feel overwhelmed. I can't do it today. What do you want me to do? Hold your fucking hand. Now, off you go. It's tough love approach, it wasn't very helpful. I just get overwhelmed in training, and I feel like that's not the way to handle it. Or we'd be on the way out to a game, and I joked about that with my man before. He said going out anywhere to play a game when we didn't know the area, that was more stressful in the car with you than the actual game. Didn't care about the game. I was like, let's go home. And she was like, no, you're playing the fucking game. We've driven all this way out here. And I was like, fine, fine. But at that stage, I didn't want to, believe me. If your child, sorry, so we go on to another point. If your child is hurting themselves, change the environment. Their environment must be overwhelming. Think about what you can change so your child feels more comfortable. For example, you might be able to reduce noise by moving your child to a different room or giving them noise cancelling headphones. Meant to be very helpful. I'm wearing a pair right now. How much noise they cancel, I don't know, but sometimes it's just handy to wear them. Does block out most of the noise. Or perhaps you can reduce your child's physical discomfort by helping them change into their favorite clothes or get some fresh air. Remove harmful items and provide alternatives. Remove items that are causing your child harm. Give them a safer alternative. For example, if your child is hitting their head with a book, like banging the head, you might swap the book for a pillow. If your child is biting themselves, you could give them a snack or a chewing toy instead. Sounds a bit like a fucking dog, doesn't it? Fuck's sake. Encourage your child to do another activity. Try to redirect your child's attention to a preferred activity or pleasant sensory experience. For example, getting a tight hug, jumping on the trampoline, hiding under the blankets, reading a book, watching a TV show, lining up blocks, or taking deep breaths. And it's not, your kid's not always going to be responsive. I know that I wasn't very, and I don't mean they're dead. No, he's unresponsive. That's their impressions, which I am now qualified to do. But I empathise with how difficult it must have been for my mum to get through to me because I was not listening. My mum tried a lot of different things with me, and I just was not taking any of them in. And that upsets you when you get older and you realize how much of a fucking burden you must have been. And I did feel it. I was like, my God, how much of a ungrateful little prick I was. She was only trying to help. She was only, yeah, she wasn't perfect, but who is? You're there kind of going, if only I'd been a better kid and understood. It's hard even now to think about it because it's like, it wasn't right on my part. She was trying stuff and I just wasn't responding to it. But I just desperately wanted to fit in, and being rejected ain't nice, you know. So you bite t-shirts, you rip stuff, you cause a lot of distress, you know. That's just how it is. Praise your child. Praise your child calmly and gently if they are gradually calming down and stop the behavior with your support. Use descriptive praise so your child knows what they did well and what they can do next time. For example, I love that you chose to jump on the trampoline instead of hitting your head when you feel upset. I feel like if an Irish mother said that to you, you kind of like, are you taking the piss or are you serious? Depends on where you are in the world. Don't feel like my mom would feel comfortable. I feel like she'd be a smart arse about it. She'd go, well, I'm delighted you're not hitting your head and you're on the trampoline instead, depending on where you were. And of course, always call emergency services. Um, so in Ireland, 999 or 112, which is always the number everyone forgets to call. But and then triple O if you're in Australia. So bit of advertising for Australia. Sorry, one sec now. So yeah, why would an autistic child or a teenager be aggressively hurting themselves or being aggressive towards others? Let's explain why. And I'd see whether this applies or whether he can relate to it and I'll talk about it. Autistic children and teenagers might be mate they might you might be autistic children and teenagers might behave aggressively or hurt themselves because they have trouble understanding what's happening around them. For example, when other people are saying, yeah, trying to understand the gist of the conversation and trying to fit in, I would add to that. They have difficulty expressing their feelings or communicating their wants and needs. They are very anxious or stressed, have sensory sensitivities, like an oversensitivity to noise or a need for stimulation. With me, like I love my drinks. I have to have my caffeine, my coffee. I need to be stimulated. Or it can be, you hate boredom. And that's often associated with the cluster B personality types. Constant boredom and need for, high stimulating environment. ADHD can come under that as well, which I've talked about that I was diagnosed with and then had it retracted. But I think it's still there. I can definitely feel a bit of it anyway. Yeah, for sure. But then they're also there in pain and don't feel well and can't communicate how they feel. Yeah, sometimes I just didn't know. Like I say, I could have gone to rugby training every week for 5 weeks, then 1 week just not feeling it. I don't know what it is other than I'm burnt out and overwhelmed. Now I know that, but I didn't at the time, and I'm just like, Dad, I can't go, I can't do this, I just can't do it. So like, oh, we were fine last week and the week before that. What's the fucking problem now? I was able to mask then. Maybe something came up that I couldn't mask this time. I don't know. Um, yeah, you just can't communicate it. You want to escape from stressful situations or activities, feel angry or out of control because of a change in routine or plan. Yeah, it's usually hard to identify the change in routine and yeah, trying to escape from the stressful situation, definitely challenging. You just don't know how, You can see that everybody else is coping or doing something, they're fitting in, and you're not. You're on the outskirts all the time looking in. You know what I mean? It's you just don't fit in. And I mean, I used to love playing football in the schoolyard, in the playground at lunchtime, when I was a child, of course. Yeah, just going into a random school and, hey kids, can I play? Who's this creep? I must just make that clear and clarify that I was also a child at the time in primary school, running around playing football. So you think you're the active kid, you're overactive. But when we weren't playing football, I used to just stand and watch other kids playing football and analyze it, what was going on. It's just like watching football or playing it. So I think that's actually a really good example of how sport was for me. I liked watching the sport and I liked playing it, but I hated the in between communication I've talked about that before, but that's a good example. I just couldn't figure out what the hell to do. I didn't know what to be doing when I wasn't playing football or rugby or something. That's the stimulation part, which is why I feel like I was always exercising, but struggled to make good friendships. If that makes sense. I hope it does. So here's a few tips now. I'm just going to get into a video that I made that Shawnee, you commented on. And I want to just answer your question there. So yeah, there we are now. Just go into that. I know you can't see my screen, so we'll show you in a sec. So we're going to go into one of my all right, here we are now. Okay. So we're going to finish on this now, and I'm just gonna basically discuss something. Shawnee, if you're watching, I think it'd be interesting to go through one of your comments. I think it's a good point as well. I think it was very good, and also here we are now, randomly adventuring. Thank you for your comment. So we're just gonna have a look. It's on this video. This is a channel that I've enjoyed watching recently. A couple that I like. I'm a big fan of Highly Suspect. In case anyone's looking, I'd love to go and see one of their concerts. Then the functional, melancholic, upbeat name for a channel, but he's funny in a sarky kind of way, um, sarky depressed kind of way. And Ryan Kelly, big fan of this channel. Massive shout out to him. I really like his stuff. And then Daniel Mackler. So just a shout out to a couple of channels I like. So yeah, I was talking about autism and conflict avoidance. So I don't think we actively seek out conflict, and I think this is a difference that I'd like to make. So some people go out, right, and I've hung around with them for my sins, and I'll own up to that. That was on me. I chose to do that. But these fuckers would actively seek confrontation. There's about 8 of their mates, and they would go out looking for fights, picking on the vulnerable people in society. And it was seen as a masculine thing to get into a lot of fights. That was always the thing, and I was aware of that. But I was kind of like, I don't want to be going around fighting with everyone. If someone attacks me, I'll fight them. But just arranging fights, and me and a teacher that I actually didn't like, but we ended up agreeing on something. I thought I actually agree 100% with what he just said. He said, and my brother also agreed with it. And I was like, yeah, he couldn't get his head around the idea of people arranging to meet up for a fight. It's like, you're not pissed off with each other now, and then you have a fight. That happens, yeah. But the fact that you would go out and arrange the fight just baffled all of us. I was always reactive. Someone did something that pissed me off, and I would hit them. You know what I mean? Sometimes over the top, but usually there was an incident that triggered my reaction. Just didn't like the way they looked at me. Nah, there's usually more justification than that. But randomly adventuring, you post. I was brought up undiagnosed and struggled with right from wrong. Okay, yeah, that's something that can definitely happen for sure. What is the acceptable right or wrong? The lack of understanding for me was a struggle, but was never was I aggressive physically or verbally. All autistic people are different, even if we are on the same level on the spectrum. Even if we are on the same level on the spectrum. Yeah, so we can be on the same level of the spectrum. Technically, you can both be high functioning, but still be completely different. So yeah, good point. Very good video. Thank you very much. I also thanked you in the comments. And now we have Shawnee K, 9175, a good pal of the show. Shout out to you, Shawnee. And you said the ideal world, Dan, is where everyone gets on, where we all respect each other. Wouldn't that be lovely? Sadly, we don't live in that world. I know, yeah. It's unfortunate, but yeah, agree with you, Shawnee. It's very unfortunate. I fully understand where someone lashes out when they lose their temper. Way worse when the lashing out is calculated, and that's what I was just talking about there. When you plan to cause physical harm to someone who hasn't caused any physical harm to you, what's going on up there? You know, a lot of people are like that. You know, that there's people who get away far too often, in my opinion, who are considered bad boys and cool, and they always get women. Somehow they always get them, and they're a dickhead. They're a little toe rag. They go around, with the eyes wide open. What you saying? What you looking at? Going around actively trying to antagonize and intimidate people. If you're someone like me who's a bit awkward, you can be vulnerable to that. And they always go around with fucking swarms of their mates, waiting to antagonize someone who's a little bit more awkward. Big, but obviously clumsy, awkward. And I always thought to myself, if they could physically beat me up, they probably would have done it. But they were scared, so they stuck to verbally saying stuff. But if someone physically did something, I would always, usually retaliate. I'd never let people walk all over me. If you're trying to take my stuff, it's like, no, you're not fucking getting it. And you got to stand up for yourself as well. But I wasn't confident. That's something. So if someone hit me, I would just start swinging like a fucking, not a windmill. There was more technique and I did boxing, so I had that. But it was just a fear, an intense black cloud of fear that came over me of every possible outcome in this situation at once. You know what I mean? Can't explain it any other way, but it was so overwhelming. It was like, oh, if I get into trouble, my mom and dad are going to kill me, or if this person beats me up, everyone will laugh at me. If I beat them up, all their mates will hop in and attack me. What scenario do I actually win? Like in what situation here could I possibly fucking win? Doesn't seem like any of them. But yeah, Shawnee, as you say, they're way worse when the lashing out is calculated. At the same time, it's good for the head to stand up sometimes. Yeah, no, you have to. You don't want to just be taking shit off people all the time. And as you say, Shawnee, in an ideal world, we'd all get along, but there are dickheads out there that are just hell bent on making your life a living fucking hell. And unfortunately, you can accept it or you can stand up for yourself. It's a shame that people like that exist in the world, but they do. So we got to deal with it. The thing I've wondered about with autistic kids is their families seem to take the brunt of the bad behavior. The behavior of the kid is not near as bad with strangers. Does that not mean that the kid can control their behavior when they want to or have to? I want to be getting to the comments after, but just to touch on your point there, Shawnee, I was quite bad with other kids. I was always in trouble with them, and then I take that home with me. Um, I'd often have a fight on the road, have to come in or be dragged in. And my mum one day said, I go on out and play. And I was like, no, I don't fucking want to. I hate that kid and I'm going to kill him. And I could see how upset she was. And it triggered something in me to go, it's upsetting her that I'm not going out and progressing at a normal rate, you know? Like as you say there, Shawnee, nothing I did was planned. I didn't plan to come home. Like I didn't come home and think, tonight I'm going to beat the living shit out of my brother. No, it happened. I was overwhelmed. He might have done something that wasn't his fault that just annoyed me and it triggered me. Doesn't mean it was right, not at all. Same in school. Someone would do something that would fucking trigger me. I cannot for the life of me understand planning on going out and hurting someone. If someone wrongs you, then yeah, fair enough. But it's hard for me to do it because this justification, rule based autistic brain of mine, it's like a set of rules and a set of social rules you have to follow that you can't break. So whenever I try and do that, like for instance, when I confronted the lad who picked on my brother in school, everything in my mind was telling me not to. My mind's telling me no, but my body. I was like, fuck this, I'm gonna go and do it. It was to overwrite my system. You know what I mean? Override and to go, fuck this, I'm doing it. I knew like the rule book said no, because that's what everybody else had taught me. And when you're trying to make sense of the world, that's what you say. You're like, okay, what is everybody's social norm? What's the acceptable thing they say to do? Because we all learn by what we're taught, don't we? And I was just told don't get into trouble, don't be violent, because when you are, it causes everybody around you not just physical but emotional pain. You know, you're the problem. You're causing so much grief, and if you don't behave, you're going to end up in a fucking special school or prison. You know, or dead as you get older. But it was never planned out ever. You know, and I hate the fact that my family had to suffer so much, and in particular my mom and my brother. I would say that's because you see your family more, you know. But there's also little quirks about them that probably annoy you more than strangers, you know. It was interesting because in school, a lot of kids would give me grief. And I remember this lad in particular, you know, was a little fella. And I started lashing out at him and his mates. I remember we had a fight before. And I was like, fuck this fella, you know, he's always mouthing off. He's always saying stuff and slagging me. And a few of his mates joined in. But when I threatened them and confronted them about it, they kind of backed off into the corner and acted like I was being unreasonable. But this fella was kind of always giving it, and everybody was kind of joking about how I could kick the living shit out of him, so he should shut up. He was like, Daniel would kill you, so you know, relax there. And then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna fucking do it. So after school, I just grabbed his bag and flung him on the ground, and then he got up and he tried to hit me, and I grabbed him by the neck and I threw him on the ground. And then a parent came over and was like, "What the fuck's going on here? You're acting like a bunch of animals." And I was kind of laughing, going, "This is easy." I was enjoying it, you know. But you've been saying a lot of stuff to me, you know. And I kind of thought, there's so many people here like fucking batter, and I don't know why I didn't do it more often, but I don't know. I guess I have a conscience. I thought I can't be getting into trouble. When I get into trouble, it upsets my family, so I've got to stop doing it. When we get further into this now, yeah. So I gave a response there. Shawnee, you seemed happy with. I won't go through the whole thing. But yeah, it's talking about don't poke the fucking bear. You know, I'm a bigger kid than you, and you're picking on me. I will leave you be if you don't bother me. But if you start physically harassing me, expect to get some fucking violence back. Like one kid before was laughing, going, and then hit me. And then I went, and fucking decked him. Then he started crying, and it was all, oh, you should know better. What's wrong with you? And I'm feeling bad about myself. Obviously, as a kid, when an adult tells you you've done something wrong, you believe it. Then I was like, why the fuck should I know better? I'm technically retarded according to you, you know. I'm supposed to be the simpleton in the corner, but somehow I should know better. That makes a lot of sense. And then talk about here button heads with my dad. And I've given examples of that where, you know, he fucking punched me, threw me on the ground, kicked me in the back, laughed at me and said it was weird or, you know, it was aggro. What's the matter with you? You know? But I'm also not excusing autistic behavior when it's bad. You know, and I'm saying it here. Um, there is no excuse, you know, like I say right here, how I handled situations. Do feel like adults could have handled it better, way better, you know. And had there been someone in my corner sticking up for me, maybe I would have felt secure and I wouldn't have lashed out at people as much. But I felt like this is going to sound very cringy, but like a cornered animal, you know, and you just start swinging and attacking because it's not a matter of life or death, but someone's out to hurt you. You got to fucking stand up for yourself. And this really, it did hit home, yeah. The fear of being arrested or something like that happening, it scared me. And I saw the fear, the genuine fear and upset in their eyes. It's like, no, I have to change. I have to be better. I have to do something. There was plenty of temptation to, if I just hit this fella, if I just fucking shut him up. I have a rule now that unless someone puts their hands on you or, you know, seriously intimidate you, because the rule book is, and I just want to say it now, if someone is cornering you and threatening to use serious violence on you, you can use reasonable force. You can punch them if you feel threatened with a reasonable amount of force. Now, there's debates over that, but Don't feel like you have to get walked all over. Absolutely not. And if someone is pushing you and shoving you, by all means, hit them. If they're physically attacking you, don't feel like you have to take any sort of physical abuse. And I'm glad you liked it, Shawnee. Thank you very much. So there's just an example you gave again, Shawnee, where you say, um, I hope that was good enough, by the way. You can check that video out, guys, if you want. But I just wanted to go through the example Shawnee gave here because I thought it was good, given his own personal example. I know a father and a son, and the young lad is diagnosed as autistic. He's about 8 or so. When they come to my place, the young lad behaves perfectly. I judge him a quiet child, so he's a quiet young fella. Yeah, fair enough. But the father would say a different story when he's at home. I'd have known the father for a long time, so I'd say you're a good judge of character in this fella, Shawnee. You know him well. You kind of know what sets him off, how his temperament is around the young fella as well, perhaps. You know, because we're always different when we're at home with our family than we are when we're out trying to impress strangers, aren't we? Or, family friends. We don't want our kid to look like the problem. Ah, kid. So like you've known the dad a long time, sound man, but he'd be regarded as a temperamental, short fused fella when things go wrong. So oh fuck, like short, quick to temper. Yeah. My dad would be he'd have quite low self esteem, so he tries to pass it off, but he's very anxious. It's like, oh, let's go, let's go. Like me and my brother were arranging to meet up with him. In the Amber Springs Hotel, which shout out, they do amazing food in the restaurant there, and hoping to meet up with them there soon. But we arranged the time. I think it was like 8 o'clock, and me and my brother were there. We were early actually. We arrived at 5 to 8, but he arrived at 10 to 8. And in a few minutes, where are you? Are you here yet? And I kind of, in a way, empathise with him because he reached out before and said, "That's my anxiety. I can't sit still for 2 seconds." So I was like, "Well, I'm glad he told me because that certainly gives me a lot more empathy towards him." Um, but yeah, he'd be quite anxious, and I wouldn't say he'd have a short fuse, but with me, he certainly didn't have much patience. Put it that way, you know. It's kind of like what you're saying there, Shawnee. Not a massive temper, but more so runs away when things get tough. More than once, I must say. But very much button heads with me when I was a kid. If I was lashing out, you're the problem. I don't want to go and deal with the problem. It's you. You need to sort your shit out. And I mean, to a large degree, I did. Large degree being a level 8 honors degree. But yeah, so you say Shawnee has a short fuse, and I reckon back then as a child, that was treated as a personality trait, but these days a diagnosis is put on it. Now I know it's a whole range on the spectrum, but it's where you draw the line and decide so far on the line it is manageable, and beyond that, the kid needs help. So I think what you're getting at there, Shawnee, is okay, he's autistic, but it's manageable, or he's so severe, we need to get him help. And yeah, I'd be out like so. Actually, to relate to what you're saying there, my dad had always. So we go off to say Mead Street or something, the little markets where they have the little rip off Ralph Lauren and Duffer shoes and the vans that fall apart after a week. The Addy Hash tops. Anyone remember them? And the BB gun and bongs. But my dad would always know a few fellas in there who we grew up with who were selling stuff, and so we go and we chat with them. Always get the knockoff gear off the back of vans because that was the authentic stuff, but they could sell it for less. They were eager to get rid of it. We were eager to buy. So like he's from a working class area in Dublin. So yeah, he knew a few lads that were hard nuts, we called them, real dubs. Let's put it that way. And he kind of felt like he had to portray me a certain way to them, and I felt an obligation to appear like you know, a proper Dublin young fella. You know what I mean, and fit into his group. but I would have been quiet enough, like when he'd take me out and he'd be drinking or whatever. I felt really uncomfortable just kind of sitting there, like, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. You know what I mean? I guess there you can kind of feel like your dad, like my dad used to even say to me, "Look, don't make a show of me here," or my mom would say something like that as well. You'd be like, "Okay, you don't want to embarrass them in front of their friends. Um, you don't really know the people. You don't really want to meet them in the first place, if I'm being completely honest." So you're like, right, if I'm good, if I'm quiet, if I just do as I'm told, we can go home and I can have my fucking meltdown in peace at home. Not that it's peaceful, but I think the reason for that, Shawnee, is that you hope it's not going to last too long. You're kind of going, can we leave yet? Can we leave yet? It's like, I don't want to be here. It was very hard, and I completely empathize with my mom. It was very hard for her to get me to do anything. It was so hard because I was just like, no, no, I don't want to do that. Like, I always loved the beach when I was there. But when my mom would say, oh, let's go to the beach, let's go to the beach, beach, hey. You see me, like, I post so many videos going to the beach now. But I was thinking, oh, no, the sun cream in my eyes because I'm a sweaty bastard. Unfortunately, the sand in my crack. We all know what that's like. But the sand sticks to the sun cream. I was like, oh, but I loved swimming. That's something I've always loved is actually getting in the water. Um, and I felt great after. I loved it. And I feel upset for my mum, and I feel like it was an unnecessary stress that she had to drag me to do it. But I'm so, so glad she did because I loved the beach. Always had a good day. And yet I would always, and that's an example right there. So, when you're in that anxious brain, the rational and emotional brain, rationally, I'd say every time I go to the beach, I feel great. But in the emotional state, and I was always an emotional brain, it's like, no, sand, sun cream all over me and getting in my eyes. I can't do it. And then it was fucking shutting down. You know what I mean? Quick to the emotional brain. But actually, our rational brain is great, gets a lot done. Wouldn't have fixed that robotic lawnmower outside if it wasn't for the rational brain. So thank you, rational brain. Dialectical behavioral therapy, it's a beast. Not just saying that, it works. It definitely works. And Shawnee, I'm glad about your question. The more the people ask these questions, don't feel like you're offended. Well, I don't think you do, and I don't think you were trying to be offensive in any way. You're simply just asking, and happy to answer. And I know you, I know your style of question, and you're always eager to know more, which is what I like about you, Shawnee. And I appreciate it. And any more, like, happy to help. Because I feel like there is a lot of misconceptions. And I went from being labeled as one of the worst cases. And this is the annoying part. You know, you go from being one of the worst cases to actually you're not that bad. What do you want? What are you moaning about? Well, it's one or the other. So either I've tried extremely fucking hard, or I never had it to begin with. You know what I mean? Um, and there are people who go, well, fair play to you, it's great that you're doing all these different things. And it is broaden your horizons. I think a lot of autistic people tend to get stuck in their own pattern doing what they want to do, not making any room for anyone else, and you end up with these Sheldon Cooper types. You're in my spot, you're in my spot. And yeah, you might be a genius when it comes to stuff like doing math and physics, mathematics. You might be a genius in that, but your social skills are shite. You can't play sport. You don't care about anyone else's needs. I mean, it's a fictional example, but these annoying types that are real. I know everything and you know nothing type, and it's like fuck off. And that's annoying. And I can sometimes be like that. I will hold my hand up, bit of a know-it-all. I can have a laugh with people too, and like kind of empathise with my dad now for a second. I imagine it wasn't easy having a son that you couldn't do that and have a laugh with. But I made every effort to do that because I wanted to impress him. I wanted to be the son you could have a laugh with, talk about football, rugby. I mean, you could. It was different before because I'd literally be naming every player and every team. And I genuinely did love it. Just hated some of the people I had to play with, but I did genuinely love sport. It was always something I loved. But your nervous system is in hyperdrive. You just can't focus. You're in that emotional brain. You have to be calm and composed when you're playing a sport, and I get nerves will be there. So it's how you manage them. You can't let that emotional brain get the better of you. That's when the meltdowns happen. And so if you can reach autistic people, even if they're not necessarily the most responsive, but if you can reach them and get through to them, maybe dialectical behavioral therapy, if we could provide it, because it helped me so much. I was literally, my mum was joking. I've ripped up a lot of rotten wood in the decking, and me and my brother are putting down planks as we speak. She said I was like a little angry kid because I didn't want to smash anything up in the house. So I started smashing up loads of bits of the rotten wood outside when I couldn't get the robotic mower to work. And I started jumping up and down like that because I didn't want to break anything in the house. So I was like, fuck this shit. This thing's going to drive me mental. It's out running smoothly now. Thank the Lord. And long may it continue. But it's been so overwhelmed, and as I say, I empathize with parents, but it's not just the job of the parents. Teachers have a huge role to play. Caregivers in a creche, they have to do a better job too. And if they don't, that's on them as well. I don't think it should all be put on the parents because my fucking heart goes out to all those parents. You know, yeah, like it's not easy for anyone, especially, and this is where my heart goes out to my own mom and dad. And as I say, particularly my mom, because she did most of, if not all, the raising, to be fair to her. We get dragged up. But I imagine seeing other kids reaching milestones and your kid isn't is quite upsetting. And it upset me. And I think that's why I went out of my way to ensure. And thankfully I did. It was good that I did. I didn't think I'd get through school. There were times where I was seriously low thinking about anything at all. Then obviously I did try. And it still got through university. And so to see myself with my mom proudly there, I got to go to my graduation for school and won a rugby award. I was in my shirt, my trousers. I looked really handsome there. Jesus, if only I could look like that now. I didn't appreciate how well I looked at the time, but not only did I end up at my school graduation knowing that I had graduated and not fucked up so much that I was going to get kicked out, I also graduated having won an award for a sport that doctors said I would never play 11 years later. So, like that makes me really proud, not only of myself, but of my family as well, that we stuck together and we got through so much shit. And then like to get through school, to get through college, to work different jobs, to move house and so much shit going on. Still, we all somehow managed and I got through college. So now it's a tough time trying to transition, but it's not surprised why I'm so burnt out. There are years worth of burnout that I'm catching up on now, but I feel like this channel would have never come about if it wasn't for that. So I will be grateful for all the shit that's happened along the way and hopefully keep this channel growing. And guys, I hope you can help me out with that. But yeah, this video has gone on for a while. I think it's an important topic because there's a lot of shit that goes along with autism. I think we all have a responsibility. I feel like you owe it to yourself as an autistic person to get help if it's offered, and there's plenty of fucking help. I'm getting it now. I'm getting a lot of help, and I've been able to add manual handling certificates, safe pass certificates, HACCP food safety training, first aid while I'm not working full time. I've been adding to the CV. I've been building that up. Every job that I've worked, as shit as it might have been, I got me some sort of skill. Conflict resolution, I think, is very important for the workplace. Standing up for yourself, that's the thing. It's like when you're told violence is wrong, aggression is wrong. that doesn't mean you get trampled all over. And I think we're all or nothing as autistic people, and we need to find that happy middle ground, you know. And for parents going through this, I hope this stuff helps. It's not just for autistic people. If you're a parent of an autistic kid, reach out. Yeah, fucking put something in below. Because I don't want it to be all doom and gloom. Maybe I can help, and talk to my mom as well. So, she's been helpful. Connecting with her and my brother has been really good. And even my dad, we've been opening up, we've been having good conversations, and that's great because he was a tougher nut to crack. But yeah, let's work together, guys. All right. On that note, I'll end it there. Thanks, guys, and hope you enjoy this one. It's an important one.